Good evening or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from the country. My name is Michael. I'm your host for yet another Nanda Journeys journey around the world with my co-host, Nicola Balmain, and our journey host, Dr. Patricia Edwards. Before we get to our amazing journey, before we do all of the amazing things we're going to be seeing in South Africa, a little bit of housekeeping. Everybody on the webinar today is muted, but that does not mean we don't want your questions. We absolutely do. So if you want, when you get a chance, put your questions. Let us know where you're from right in that chat box there on the right of your screen. It'll allow us to know that the chat's working, allow us to know that you guys are here and you're engaged. But also, any questions you have, please feel free to bring those to us as well in the chat. Able to. Oh, my laptop is freezing a little bit. I'm going to click a few here. The emojis on the bottom of your screen will allow you to share your engagement as well. So feel free, if you hear something you like, hear something you love, hear something that makes you laugh, use those emojis to let us know that you're engaged. Last but not least, our webinar is also being recorded this afternoon. So if you have to step away for another prior engagement, please don't feel bad. We will send out the recording. Or if you're here on behalf of a few other travelers that are unable to join us, we will share that recording with you, so that way you can share the recording with us, with them. The more, the merrier. We're excited about our journey. We want as many people to join us as possible. So let's get into our journey to South Africa, Intro to Literacy and Education, departing on June 9th, 2025, arriving back on June 20th, 2025, with a delegation leader, Dr. Patricia Edwards. Before we get into the journey, I want to first introduce my friend and the founder of Nanda Journeys, Nicola, to tell us a little bit about Nanda Journeys. So if you're new to the Nanda family, she can explain a little bit of what it's all about. Nicola, thank you again for joining us. We have another great itinerary, another great journey to talk about.
So good to see you, Michael, and so good to see you, Pat, again. I know we talked so much about this journey. This has been several months, many months in the making, but welcome, everybody. If you're new to Nanda Journeys, I always start out by saying welcome to the Nanda family. Whether you decide to join Pat in South Africa or not, you're part of this wonderful network. And what we're committed to at Nanda Journeys is international engagement that is very people-centric. It's very transformative. And Nanda Journeys was founded in 2015 when a prior organization that both Pat and I were connected at, they closed. And I simply just could not walk away from the transformative power of these career enrichment journeys. I'd fallen in love with how amazing it is, not only for our travelers, but also for the people that we connect with when we are in the country. So here we are. Nanda Journeys was founded, and I'm so grateful to Pat and the many leaders that chose to join us on the Nanda Way. Thank you, Michael. You queued that up perfectly for me. Thank you. So a little bit about the Nanda Way and why we're just a little bit different. This is an organic kind of statement that came to us from our travelers, from our guides, from our wonderful leaders like Pat, who have done many of these journeys. And people kept talking to us about the Nanda Way. I'm like, well, what do you mean the Nanda Way? Well, we love the Nanda Way because it's so different. And that really it sat kind of on my heart, and it really resonated. I'm like, well, yeah, we actually do have the way, but that's just the normal way of operating for us. And what that means is it's always immersive and authentic. Even this conversation we're having today, I want it to feel like you're talking to a family member about planning an international journey somewhere. I want your questions for Pat and for Michael to be as organic as they would be around your kitchen table having dinner. So everything we do is with a conscientious mind. We really try and select hotels, experiences, and things for you to engage with that are going to have an impact on the local community you're visiting. So we do our best to spend your travel dollars in the community, the small town, the small village where you're visiting, so that your imprint can be as impactful as possible, both from what you learn to what you also give back. So I warmly welcome you all to the Nanda Way, and thank you for being here to learn more about this fabulous journey to South Africa.
I say this every single time. I love how this organic thing has come to be at Nanda Journeys, and how the Nanda Way has just found its way through every aspect of what a Nanda journey is, all the way through. Well, I think my favorite part of the Nanda Way isn't actually on this list, and like I always say, I think my favorite part of the Nanda Way is our journey hosts, and this This journey is no exception in regards to the quality of the hosts. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Patricia Edwards before we allow her to speak after, we've enjoyed speaking all this while.
Yeah, well, it's a great honor, and one of the privileges of founding Nanda Journeys was the great honor that many of the people that we worked with along the way continued their journey with us. So for those of you that don't know Dr. Patricia Edwards, drpatriciaedwards.com is where you really should go, because this list is not going to do this wonderful woman justice. She is an absolutely sought out, preeminent figure in education. These accolades would go on for several pages. We chose some of the things that we think would resonate with our audience who have a professional interest in education, literacy, global learning, global literacy. So as you can see, Pat, who I now fondly refer to as Pat, having known her for many, many, many years now, is so accomplished. And Pat, it's an absolute honor and privilege. Every time I talk to you, you're getting another award. You're working on another project. Tell us your favorite accomplishment is in this wonderful world of education.
Well, just recently.
Oh, did we lose Pat?
Is the author of Dick and Jane. So just to have the honor of receiving the award that was written by the person that I read as a small girl in, K5. Actually, the Dick and Jane books were used in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. And so I was just elated to win that particular award. And when I was president of the International Reading Association, one of the slogans was, "We teach the world to read." And I was sort of fascinated by that whole notion of we teach the world to read. So my next question was, how does the world read? And I teach pre-service teachers and young teachers. And a lot of them, when different people come from different countries, they are not aware of their ways of learning and knowing. And so that was a compassionate project that I put forth, where I asked people in different countries, because at the time, the International Reading Association is now the International Literacy Association. We had councils in 100 countries. So that's a lot of countries.
And a lot of countries.
So it's a lot of countries. And so I didn't get all of them, but I was trying to get a sampling of different ways of teaching and knowing. And so I was able to give certain professors in different countries like a camera, video camera. And also I told them to videotape classrooms, to talk to us in real time, like a commentary. Once they collected the information, was to talk with us. And so when I did my presidential address, it was called The Power of Literacy. And it was well received because I had these snippets from all around the world. And the audience really, really liked that, because when people come from different countries, and our teachers here in the U.S. don't know how they were taught to read, we might not be making those connections to help them in literacy. So that's how I got started. Yes. That's
amazing. And then we've worked together quite a lot over the years, and people to people. And South Africa was a destination that you visited in 2010. And we always develop these programs collaboratively. What many people might not know is we first had a conversation in March, March or April, with a view to really honing in on what were the professional development objectives for everybody that might consider joining you. How could we make it an enriching experience? And these are kind of the pillars of every professional development journey that we take together. We want to know from you, how can we enrich your experience, but everybody that joins you as a delegate, how can we make sure that we're focused on their personal development, their network, their peer engagement? Like the cultural quotiency of the world now is really important. The world's getting smaller. How do we understand each other? And you and I had a conversation around that, and you wanted to focus on this. How does the world read? How do people access education and have it relevant for all ethnicities, all backgrounds. So tell us a little bit about what you think is the primary learning outcome, the primary reason people should join a learning opportunity like this outside of a classroom.
Well, for one thing, we live in a global society. You know, back in the day, people would say one idea might take 3 days to go around the world. Now you can send things in microseconds. And so I think the power of going outside the country is to look at other people's ways of knowing and interacting. Because some of the ways, I mean, American teachers know what happens in American schools, but it's okay to know what happened in other schools and some of the challenges that teachers have in terms of materials. And so therefore it creates sort of a sensitivity to people looking at other people in different kinds of ways. And of course, those ways are positive ways. And of course, on the last trip to South Africa, we had principals, we had reading specialists, now they're called literacy coaches. We had a variety of different kinds of people that participated. And so there were connections among people who actually kept in touch, because if everybody's sort of around the same ideas, people give people different ways of thinking and knowing. And of course, that was one of the highlights in meeting the educators who shared their ideas and ways of knowing with us was extremely powerful.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for your collaborative efforts on the journey.
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why traveling like this is so impactful. And this is, why, Nanda Journeys does this so well in building their itineraries is it's not just continuing education personally to kind of continue to learn about, your field, but it's also that peer engagement, connecting with people at different levels within their own careers, different ambitions, different experiences that they can all share together and creating that network that not just that might start on a Nanda journey, but continues to expand above and beyond for many, many years in some instances, lifelong friendships that start from Nanda journeys. But then also bringing in that cultural aspect and the cultural immersion. So talking about the culture of South Africa and the experiences in South Africa, tell us, I'll ask you first, Nicola, tell us a little bit about why Nanda, and then, Pat and you, why South Africa and why now?
Yeah, well, Pat and I actually had a really wonderful, dynamic conversation. Anybody who knows Pat knows you're never going to be bored. When you leave a conversation with Pat, you're always leaving with a mindful of information and ideas. And that was a really energetic conversation. We talked about Europe, we talked about South America, but we talked about South Africa as revisiting a place where Pat went with a professional delegation in 2010. But also they've just celebrated their 30-year anniversary from apartheid. Politically, we're all polarized again all over the world, regardless of where you are. So we felt like it would be really, really important to go back and compare, contrast, but also learn from other people around this kind of putting everybody in a box. And then how do you manage to teach a diverse segment of students well, you have a lot of this conflict going on around you or this difference of opinion. So, Pat, that's what I took away from why we decided South Africa. How about you?
Well, one of the reasons I decided South Africa again is that I had such a wonderful time. And we learned that there are like 11 different languages spoken. And the people were very open talking about some of their challenges in working with a wide variety of students. And of course, getting the opportunity to go to the Apartheid Museum, getting a chance to see the house of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu and Winnie Mandela. And I think we were told that Jane Fonda was the one that actually donated Winnie Mandela's house, and people were excited about that. Going to Robben Island, just going through the Apartheid Museum, we learned a lot about the development of issues, and it really sparked a big conversation among the participants. And just talking, because sometimes there are similarities, there are differences, But we really liked that. And we had a chance to go to the school that Oprah Winfrey built for girls. That was a really big highlight. And people really talked to the people that were administrators there and some of the students. And they were excited that they had the opportunity to meet, her, Oprah, And so all of those things were extremely exciting. And of course, not Desmond Tutu, but one of the questions that people kept asking was how did things finally come together for them to have these conversations? Because sometimes when you're talking about issues, it's kind of hard for people to come together and talk and really share their intimate thoughts. And so the different guides that we had were just absolutely great, I would say.
I love that. Yeah. We've had a couple of professional delegations to South Africa this past year, and one of them was a speech language group, but there were a lot of literacy kind of reading group engagements, and the accolades that came back from that, the professional learning, and you're right, those difficult conversations and breaking that down. One thing I love about our team there, who's been our team for 20 plus years, is they break that down for you really early in the conversation. So the orientation session you have early will allow you to really set those things aside and engage as yourself. And that's what came back really, really strong from the two delegations that were there. And they said they really were able to be present as themselves, but learn so much because those kind of things were distilled out for them so they could just observe as an individual person, and everybody had different observations for South Africa. I just love listening to people when they come back.
Yeah. And I know we've spoken a lot about it, but if you haven't thought about why Nanda, these are some of the people that have recently come back from South Africa journey. My favorite one is right there in the middle. Thank you, Nanda, for the trip of a lifetime experience. I also like the quote there on the bottom right, that says, "My live list," as opposed to bucket list. I like the idea of a live list. One of the trips that was on their live list. But as you can see, these types of journeys are life-changing, and this journey to South Africa is not going to be any different. Again, talking really quickly about the itinerary itself, we fly and depart from New York, and we fly into Johannesburg, where we spend 3 evenings in the capital city of South Africa. From there, we go up north to Pilanesberg. There's a reason we go to Pilanesberg outside of all the other outside of the other parks. I'm not going to spoiler alert it here, but there is a great reason for that. From there, we fly down to Cape Town. We spend 4 beautiful evenings in the city of Cape Town before we return home, and our journey comes to an end. So our first night starts with an overnight flight from New York City to South Africa. From there, we arrive in South Africa. We don't have anything planned for that first day except checking into our beautiful hotel. That hotel is one of the reasons a lot of the reviews from the last journey that came back, they spoke a lot about the nice accommodations. So that journey in that hotel is a great place. It's beautiful to get out there and explore, but it matters where you rest your head because it gives you energy for the next day. But we just check into our hotel, and then we have what I consider to be one of my favorite parts of a journey with Nanda, and that's the welcome dinner. It's a good opportunity to break bread, get to know your fellow travelers. It's a great opportunity to meet new people and learn names. And I always say it's a great dynamic. They don't talk in the beginning and then they don't stop talking at the end. And this is a great opportunity to get them talking. Nicola, Pat, tell me a little bit about your experiences during welcome dinners.
Well, the welcome dinner is one of my favorites because you're observing everybody just getting to know each other and their excitement, and they're trying to overcome their jet lag, but their excitement is taking over. And then they have lots of things to share about what they hope to learn and hope to witness. And Pat, I don't know about you if you feel that same way, but the energy of the welcome dinner, the anticipation and the what's next, that's kind of what's exciting for me.
Well, one of the things that I told the welcoming group to do is not just talk to the same person the whole time. Move around. You might sit with person one, and then you might go with another person, and therefore you get a chance to meet everyone. So you want to welcome everybody. Tell them a little bit about you. And one of the things that I did was have everybody introduce themselves and why they decided to come. And so that was very insightful.
That's awesome. That's great. Everybody's going to love the welcome dinner.
Yeah, and it's a small group too, right? So that's the other part of all Nanda journeys is that they're all small group. bespoke journey. So you're not dealing with, if you've been on some of those large motor coach tours where there are 40, 45 people, you don't even get a chance to meet everyone. On a journey like this, you really get a chance within the first couple of days to really create a close-knit community amongst yourselves. So after the welcome dinner on day 3,
But I have to
we
tell
start
you
our
one
cultural.
thing. At the
Yeah.
last time I went, there were 40 people, and that was kind of hard to manage to
Many.
get people. So I think having 20 people is a little bit better. Mhm.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've done them both as well, Pat. And I can tell you 20 beats 40 every single time. 40 has its place. There's obviously opportunities there, but with 20 passengers, you definitely have a great opportunity to get a chance to meet everyone.
Mhm.
On day 3, we start our cultural exploration, getting a chance to talk about the Apartheid Museum, going to Soweto. You've already talked a little bit about this on your last journey, Pat, some of the experiences that you've had. But Nicola, Pat, tell me a little bit about the Apartheid Museum, what the experiences are, and what it means to the travelers when they enter, and how they feel after they leave.
Yeah. And if I might, just for 1 second, Ezekiel, I just want to acknowledge your question. And if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
mind just holding just for a little while, we are going to speak to your question a little bit on a couple of slides, but then we can come back to it towards the end, because there are some professional slides that we're going to talk specifically about some of the engagements, and I hope it'll answer your question. I do believe there are definitely ways that we will be able to showcase different ways of, yes, absolutely westernized standards, and trying to balance, indigenous education. And there is a specific professional engagement opportunity there. So please allow us to revisit your question. And if we haven't answered it fully, we'll definitely dig in a little bit deeper. So on the question of the Apartheid Museum, I mean, it's a very sombering experience. Pat, you've experienced this for yourself also. Maybe I would invite you to talk from your observations of how it impacted the participants you were with.
Well, one of the things, I gave people the choice of either going through the black entrance or the white entrance. And surprisingly, people did choose the opposite of their race and to walk in the shoes of someone else. And that was very enlightening for them to come and see what it was like, even though they were not a part of that particular race. And I think that's what came out.
Yeah.
Was for people to have these cross-cultural conversations, and to, like people say, you never know how someone else feels unless you walk in their shoes.
Yeah.
And so I do think going with people going in the opposite of their race really enlighten that conversation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And, I think having the opportunity to really see that at the beginning, it's very purposeful why we do that, because I think it's really important to understand the past, like the long past, the long history. And in addition to, that first day, I can't underestimate enough, the orientation in South Africa is a really big part of getting you grounded to their experience, so that we can set the stage for the backstory, the current story, and the ever-evolving story. Of course, yes, it's very different than it was, but doesn't mean to say that it isn't without its challenges. And Soweto, allows that conversation as well. So going to the township, which is now, such a diverse community. You have mansion homes and still some of the shanty shacks and things like that. And it's just this kind of melting pot. And, it's the only place where, as you mentioned earlier, Pat, you can walk down the street and be in the same location as two Nobel Prize winners, right? So, Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, see where they grew up, see where they were influenced, hear their story, but meet people today. Like, what are people's stories today in Kliptown, and what is it like to live there? So this will be an opportunity. It's a cultural immersion opportunity to understanding the importance of the township.
Yeah, and after our stay in Soweto, our stop in Soweto, we head on to the Hector Peterson Memorial. Tell us a little bit about the memorial, a little bit about its significance to the South African culture and heritage that we'll be learning about today.
It's super important here because this is the start, of the freedom struggle, and Hector Peterson was If you're familiar with the picture that was widely printed around the world during this time, it was a young man that lost his life. So this is another opportunity again to hear those stories. You know, his sister still lives in the area. So they're really real stories that you will hear, and understanding what really did happen and how can we reflect on that and move forward and learn from it. So this is an important day. You know, Soweto is very vibrant and fun now. So there's a balance of very, very somber, committed, having to really dig in. But then there are some lighter moments throughout the day to allow you to really understand the current culture.
Yeah, and I think the itinerary is built very purposefully to show people the past, the culture of South Africa before we delve into the professional program on day 4. Because on the professional program on day 4, when you start to learn about some of the things that are happening in South Africa that may be different from the U.S., that is only better seen through the lens of the current culture. So getting a chance to experience the culture first is done purposefully as you enter into the professional program on day 4. Tell us a little bit about the professional program. I know that Ezekiel had some ideas or questions around how that may be different, and I think that's a big part of what we learned about during our professional program. But tell us a little bit about what's in store for us.
And Pat, I'll invite you to speak a little bit on this too. But first of all, I want to let people know that we are going to be limiting the delegation to 20, and that includes your guests. So if you are bringing a guest, they're warmly welcome, and we have a guest itinerary as well. But before we finalize the program and all of the professional content, we ask everybody for their own bios. What are their own learning desires? What are their curiosities? What is the learning outcome? So whilst we have a framework of where we're going and what we hope to accomplish, we still want to hear from you. At the end of the day, this is your journey, and we want to mold and kind of make the journey to be as, what's the word I'm looking for, as impactful as possible for you from the cultural and a professional learning opportunity. So the University of Witwatersrand, they call it the UWITS as what they refer to it as locally, we will shape that around the final delegation in terms of who we meet with. So clearly there's an opportunity to learn about so many different things at this particular university. And Pat, I know you're excited to look at universities as a professor yourself. It's really nice to be able to go and meet with fellow professors, students, learn about how are they educating the upcoming educators. But the topics specifically will be identified once we know who of the wonderful delegates that are considering this opportunity are going to join us. So maybe speak to your university visits in the past, Pat.
Well, we only visited like one university, and basically they talked about K-12 education, and then some people had questions about adult literacy because this was doing right after apartheid, and people wanted to know, with the number of people not being educated, what were they doing to increase the literacy skills of a whole group of people that might not have had a chance to at K-12 education or were forced to drop out. So that really put in a very enlightening conversation with what they were trying to do. And of course, people mentioned in this country that, we had Head Start. I don't know whether or not they have that kind of program for preschool children, but, a lot of kids were going to schools where they had to pay tuition. So that was an issue too. So they were trying to figure out ways to include everybody into the educational system.
Yeah, and I know there were a lot of modern day challenges that came up on the last delegation, in terms of where they've come from and where they are today. So I know the topics of conversation you'll be invited also to share your perspective from being an educator or somebody involved in education in the US. That's the other wonderful thing about these journeys. It's not a one-sided kind of engagement. We really encourage and invite everybody to share their perspectives, to get involved in the conversation, and to present your own topics for conversation so that the learning can be more profound, it can be sustained. And I think that then generates these connections that I love, which are the ongoing collaborations between people that you meet along the journey. And it's so hard to predict when they're going to happen. But every single delegation has something that has this most wonderful outcome. And we're going to the reading library and reading literacy program that our speech language pathologist visited.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they're still supporting them, and they're still doing things where they can continue to learn together and help them to deliver their objectives. And that's something else I love about these programs.
One of the things that I did, and it worked pretty well, was to ask delegates to go back to their individual communities and write a story about their experience in South Africa. And also, I actually had an article written on South Africa in Reading Today, and I'm pretty sure it's called Literacy Today now. I know Colleen Clark, she's the managing editor. You know, we can have an article that would be written on this particular topic.
Yeah, that's great. I know journaling and being able to have published articles, or if you have specific goals, then introduce to us so we can incorporate that in the planning. So many different conversations can happen. We create the platform for them to happen, and then we really invite you to be part of that final outcome.
Absolutely. So there's a full day here on day 4 of education and engagement, not only with the locals, but with your peers that you're traveling with, on learning about South Africa, the culture, and some of the literacy challenges that they may face, or some of the ways they overcome those challenges. On day 5, we have another amazing opportunity in the morning to have a great conversation with someone who's making a big impact here in Johannesburg. Tell us a little bit about who we meet, Nicola, and kind of the conversation that we have with her, and what impact she has had here in the area.
Yeah, and I regret that I have not mastered this wonderful lady's first name, but she does welcome us all to call her Mimi. So Mimi Mutse is a wonderful leader. She's a thought leader in her community. She does things a little bit differently. So she is really engaged in the conversation around how do you apply Indigenous education values to the traditional learning opportunities of everybody in your community. So the conversation really here, Ezekiel, goes back to your question is, okay, well, how are we taking account of all sides here? You know, there is that westernized push, but how are we honoring and protecting the traditional Indigenous African learnings, history, heritage, language? You know, Pat, you mentioned yourself, there's 11 languages. There's 3 or 4 of them, I think, are kind of the official languages, but there are so many languages here that need to be accommodated. And this conversation with Mimi, who founded this wonderful nonprofit, I think will be very profound. And again, with her, there is a whole host of topics for dialogue and conversation. We'll share her full bio with everybody so we can really dial into what would be a great conversation. But she is a thought leader. She's very progressive, and she uses so many different talents to push the boundaries of a conversation, I would say. I think, Pat, you and your delegates are going to get along famously with her. She is a wonderful lady doing amazing things and probably on the edge. So I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, probably one of the key points is that you shouldn't have to give up your culture in order to become mainstream. So you want to hold on to your mother tongue, ways of knowing. And so just as people learn mainstream culture, it's also important to learn other people's culture and ways of knowing.
100%. And this is that opportunity to open that dialogue and that conversation as it relates specifically to South Africa. So I'm very excited already to hear about how this day goes and what the outcomes are.
And after a day and a half of learning and peer engagement and growth, we take off this afternoon for Pilanesberg National Park. Pilanesberg National Park is located just in northern South Africa and one of the less widely known national parks. But there's one really good reason, or there's a few reasons why we go, because it's still a beautiful park. One of them being this beautiful bush lodge. Tell us a little bit about our stay here, Nicola, before we get into our game drives while we're in this national park.
This is our preferred location for our safari experience, your Big 5 game safari, of course, not to be missed if you're going to be in South Africa. So Pilanesberg is easier access from Johannesburg, so it allows us more time for you to have those professional engagements and the cultural exchanges. Backabung Lodge has been enjoyed by many, many groups from Nanda Journeys. There's a couple of different reasons that Pilanesberg is great. One is that access. So it's 3 hours drive from Johannesburg, so you're not losing a day. It's the only malaria-free park. Not that we're worried about malaria in Kruger or other parks, but it does exist. But Pilanesberg is designated a malaria-free park. And there is an opportunity as well as an optional activity to do a hot air balloon ride. So we have several safaris included as part of your experience, the open Jeep safaris. But if you wanted to do hot air balloon ride, I was so fortunate to just do that in Tanzania, and one of the most incredible experiences of my travel life, and it's very powerful. But you can only do that in Pilanesberg in terms of the national parks in South Africa. So a wonderful experience. As you can see in this picture here, the topography, you've got those little hills in the background. Kruger's amazing, it's wonderful, but it's a little bit more flatland. So the topography here is just a little bit different. The game viewing is still just as spectacular. So it's our preferred option, and nobody's come back disappointed.
Yeah, and we do a little bit of a game drive before we go to the Bush Lodge, but it's the first morning that we're here that we get a chance to have a really big game drive. And they tend to do the game drives in the morning and in the afternoon. I mean, in the mornings and in the evenings, because that's when the animals are a little bit more active. It's not as hot. They're not trying to hide from the heat. So they're a little bit more active. They're getting out there, and you can see them moving around. So that's something that we're doing on day 2 in Hunt of the Big 5. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Pat. I didn't ask you this before, but there are the Big 5 in South Africa that we go on the game drive for. Do you know who we go and hunt for with our cameras, not with real guns, but we hunt with our cameras? What are we looking to take pictures of? Do you know who the Big 5 are?
Well, I got a picture here in my room. You would ask me that question. I can't tell you right now. I don't know the big. Let me look on my phone.
Well, let's leave it as an exploration for everybody. That it's a nice big surprise. But the big 5 is what you're going to want to see, and
I want to see them when I'm inside one of them, and we did see one of those, and they jumped over the thing that scared the bejeebers out of everybody.
Yeah, well, everybody's safari is different, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so the Big 5, you can see there: lion, the Cape buffalo, the rhinoceros, the leopard, and the elephant. So we're in the search of all 5 of those while we're traveling through our Pilanesberg game drive. One question I'm going to ask you again, Pat. Can you guess which one is the hardest to find? Which one are you the luckiest if you see the particular animal?
Probably the rhino. I don't know. Probably.
You would think the rhino, because it is probably, if not one of the most endangered animal out of the list. But it's actually the leopard, because the leopard likes to hide in the trees. It's a lot harder to find. So if you go on one of these game drives, so when you go on these game drives, if you see the leopard, consider yourself lucky, because that's the hardest one to find.
Well, I can tell you right now, the elephants were a piece of work, because we saw the whole family, and they took their own time to walk across. And then you didn't want to spook them by blowing your horn. So there they were, walking very slowly. You could tell there was the mama, the daddy, and the children.
It's the one thing I will say about safari experiences, and I've had several. I'm really lucky. You cannot describe them in pictures and words. It's impossible. You have to feel it. I just took my husband for his first safari this year, and the word he used is like, it's incredible. It's like, it's surreal. It's like, you just can't show people a safari. You have to feel it for yourself. So it's a special experience, and we're very, very fortunate to have done it.
Well, when I was there, we didn't go on a safari, but I went to Kenya, and I went to Masai Mara. And that's when we went on, we were out there for 3 days. By the time we finished, I thought, I don't want to see any more animals
Oh, I could stay out there for 2 weeks. I could stay there, no
They
problem.
were interesting, but I thought, see, I had just flown and then I had to take a 6-hour ride. I had just flown into Nairobi and took a 6-hour ride. I was so sleepy. I had a bobblehead. And so then we had to go up there and then go on the trip, and my whole body was shutting down because it was like a 17-hour flight.
That's so funny. Well, this is a good opportunity for me to actually answer one of the questions that came up. And can you spend more time there? And absolutely. This is actually one country where many of our delegates and participants, they either go in early or they stay longer. You can stay longer in South Africa. You go to Botswana, Zimbabwe. There's so many other things. So yes, we can have a conversation and be happy to help people do more game drives if they want to, Pat. This is a taster, just a taster.
Well, when I was there, I did go to Zimbabwe, and you can actually walk to Zambia.
Yeah, it's you can do some great extension options. So I think it was Laura that asked that question. So Laura,
and we have a lot of students. We have a lot of students from different parts of Africa. So I had a chance to go over to Botswana. That's not that far. And this time I might go to Malawi because we had 10 African women here that were doing some research in the sciences, and I got a chance to meet a nice young lady. So I might go to Malawi.
Awesome. Very good.
Yeah. So we have a game drive during the day. We have some evening relaxed time at our beautiful lodge. The following day, we do one final game drive to get one last look at the beautiful animals. It's funny. First time people are on a safari, they're taking pictures of every zebra they see until they realize it's like seeing a taxi cab in New York City. So they're very plentiful, the animals there.
Yeah.
Or we get a chance to get stuck in a South African traffic jam, like Pat got stuck in with the elephants crossing the road. After our game drive, we fly to the beautiful city of Cape Town and we check into our Southern Sun hotel. And it's a beautiful hotel where we'll be able to rest our heads again for the evening. On day 8, we head out to the Cape Peninsula, the very world-famous Cape of Good Hope, to learn and meet with some of the locals at Boulders Beach. Tell us a little bit about our experience at Boulders Beach, Nicola.
Yeah, the only place where you can see the African penguins. So it's a highlight for everybody of their experience. There is something very, very cute and endearing about seeing these wonderful animals just in their natural environment. And of course, you're also going to the southern tip of the continent as well. So it's a whole peninsula day with beautiful ocean views. The Boulders Beach is just incredible having these little guys behind you. And then the botanical gardens. So from your camera's perspective, they're going to be very, very, very busy on this day. There's just so much beauty, and I think you will see the lush green that you're seeing here. You're going at the opposite season, so talking a little bit about opposite seasons. So it's going to be a little bit cooler, it's not going to be hot, which is the perfect way to enjoy South Africa. But Cape Town a little bit warmer because of that more Mediterranean climate, but of course once you join the journey, we'll prepare you with all of those notes, climate and everything else. Like today, we really want to get you excited about the itinerary.
And bring an extra bag in case you like to have souvenirs. That's one of my issues. I love souvenirs and I'm always buying stuff. So you don't want your bag overweight. So you might want to buy something.
An extra bag. And we always take you to places where you can buy local, unique. We're not going for the you get the airport stuff if you want the kitschy stuff, but on Nanda Journeys, we're going to take you to some nice artwork, some nice textiles, pottery, and wine. We're going to get to the wine eventually, I think.
Now you're speaking my language. But after a few days of cultural engagement, hunting for buffalo with our cameras, we're back to the professional exchange on day 9, and this is going to be a very impactful day. Not only with meeting someone very special, but also with our trip to Robben Island. Tell us a little bit about what's in store for us on this day, 9, Nicola.
Yeah. And Pat, you mentioned this was a bit of a highlight for a lot of your delegates and yourself. So Robben Island, of course, Nelson Mandela's imprisonment for many years. And the gentleman on the far left here, his name is Christo Brand. And he's a very dear friend of Nanda and has met with many of our delegations. And the unique thing about Christo is he was Nelson Mandela's former jailer. on Robben Island, and he was a jailer turned friend. They befriended each other while he was at Robben Island, and Christo ended up actually working for Nelson Mandela, was a big part of his career, and he's here sharing his story in his book. So you will have an evening with Christo, and he'll tell you about his time in Robben Island and his perspective, of course, but also about his time with his dear friend Nelson Mandela. So this is a very unique element that you won't really find on other itineraries. We're very, very fortunate that Christo is a friend of our very dear and special partners down in South Africa.
You know, one of the things that really got people really, really emotional was actually going in the jail cell of Nelson Mandela, which was not that big.
Yeah.
And then they were telling us about how many minutes they let him out per day. And you'd be surprised how small the cell was. So it just brought back a lot of emotions for people. You know, it's okay to read about something when you actually see it. It gives you a whole different impression of things.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we get a chance, weather permitting, to visit Robben Island, obviously, as well. Getting a chance to visit. There's a quote in Good Will Hunting where he talks to him about, you might have read about the Sistine Chapel, but you've never been there where you can actually smell and tell me what it smells like. And it's not until you actually experience the destination that you actually get a feel of what people might have gone through, especially someone like Nelson Mandela, who had been put into jail on Robben Island. So after our emotional visit to Robben Island and getting a chance to meet some of the people that knew Nelson Mandela, we travel on day 10 with another professional engagement to a school visit. We travel to the winelands and Table Mountain, finally getting a chance to do some wine tasting. But tell us a little bit about this final professional engagement, Nicola. This is where we get a chance to, learn a little bit more. Tell us what's different and how this can sometimes be similar and a great bookend to our journey.
Yeah. So as well as the school visit, we're going to engage along the way at some point as well in a kind of a reading room kind of project for, how are they opening up reading opportunities and learning to read and literacy for people in all areas. So there's several nonprofits that we will become familiar with. And then a school visit, again, depending on our participants, that will somewhat help us direct which school are we going to. Is it going to be an elementary or secondary, or those options will all be kind of frameworked out around the core interests of the group. But I think being in a school is a really powerful way to have eyes on, how is, a classroom being managed, but there are so many different forms of education. Ezekiel, you mentioned this earlier in the conversation. We're hoping to try and give you as broad a perspective as possible with the different locations, the different interactions with professors, teachers, nonprofit leaders. So in those kind of suburb areas, we're introducing you to nonprofits that are trying to bridge the gap between public access to education and where those gaps are. So that's where we're really trying to provide that closed loop kind of perspective. Of course, we're here for 10 days. There's a lot more to see, a lot more to do, and a lot more conversation to have. But we are doing our very best to give a broad perspective as possible that looks at all sides of the education spectrum.
Yeah. We're here for 10 days, which poses the question, why did we wait so long to have a wine tasting? But I promise you it's worth the wait. Tell us a little bit about our stop at the winelands in South Africa and the experience that we have ready for our lunch.
Yeah, Pat and I talked about this as well. It's like a nice way to wrap up, what would have been a very meaningful kind of mind busy focused experience, kind of on and off between the safari and the professional learning and obviously all the history and the knowledge that you're taking on board. To go to the winelands at the end of your journey, sit, have a glass of wine, South African wine. I live in California, so I'm very blessed too, but South African wines are among some of the most amazing wines in the world. So what better way to wind down, exchange ideas about what you've witnessed. And Pat, I think you're looking forward to this a little bit.
I am, we didn't go to the winelands when I was there. And, but here in Michigan, I just went on a Spartan bus tour. And, Michigan has some good wine. I've never had South African wine, but We got some good wine here in Michigan. And I
Yeah.
think it's good to have it at the end because you don't want people not fully focused. And so the next couple of days they'll be getting them back on the plane. It's okay to be not so focused.
Yeah, this is a great time to really enjoy, some gorgeous wine, learn about the history of wine in Africa, and maybe even get a shipment of your own. I don't know, maybe, possibly, I don't know. But there is that option as well. But yeah, great day in Cape Town.
Yeah, and no
Table
stop in
Mountain.
Cape Town. No stop in Cape Town would be done without a trip to Table Mountain, getting a chance to oversee the beautiful city of Cape Town from the highest peak here. Again, weather permitting, as long as the weather or the wind isn't too bad, we get a chance to go up here. Have you ever been to the top of Table Mountain, Pat?
I've never
That's a
been
new
there.
experience for you too. That's great. I haven't
That's
either.
almost
So
like going skiing. Let me tell you, I have been to Colorado and I told them I'm not getting up on the skis because you have to come down. So as long as I don't have to ski down, and if I
Nope.
have to ride down, that's fine. I thought, oh no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's a
And oh,
beautiful
they had a
table.
good time picking at me. I've been to Breckenridge and all these places. I said, I'm not doing it.
You ride up, you ride down. You can see if you look at the top of that screen, you can just see a little tiny cart where you're going. But you ride up, ride down, but it's beautiful views from the top up there. And just as important, I believe, as the welcome dinner is the farewell dinner. We've been here for 10 days. We are ready to sleep in our own beds, but parting is such sweet sorrow. So now is the time to say farewell to the new friends we've made. It's amazing how fast you can build relationships in 10 days when your group is as small as 20 travelers. So this is a great opportunity to exchange email addresses, learn airdrop and pass along photos. Tell us a little bit about the meaningfulness behind the farewell dinner, Pat, and some of your experiences during the farewell dinner.
Well, actually, this is interesting. There were some tears. People didn't want to go home, and
Mhm.
and people lived in different states, and they even said, you know what, I'm going to come visit you, and vice versa. So that was a really good thing. And also not exactly pen pairs, but visiting pairs,
Mhm.
which I thought was very good because it's almost like you're right. About 10 days. Well,
Mhm.
actually, I went on this bus trip and we bonded in 3 days.
Yeah.
And, you're up late talking and visiting and seeing what ways in which you can work together. So the farewell dinner was a farewell dinner for us coming back to the US, but not a farewell dinner in terms of people making connections with each other.
Mhm. That's really
Absolutely.
true, and I did neglect to highlight for everybody, and I'm so sorry about that. The guest program, that's entirely on me. I totally forgot. I got so excited on the professional content, but there is a guest program. So if you have a travel companion or a spouse or somebody in your family, some people do bring their teenage grandchildren, like in the high school, because it's such a unique learning opportunity. And we do have cultural activities for them where you're in those professional engagements. So they're always privately guided, so that you're still going to be within the framework of the group. So you come back together then for the meals and evening events and things like that. So if you had somebody in your family that wasn't involved in education or literacy, they're warmly welcome to, and we have a great itinerary for them.
Absolutely. Yes. All are welcome on this amazing journey. On day 11 and 12, we returned back to the United States, taking our memories, but leaving our footprints, as we like to say at Nanda Journeys. If you are interested, if you're excited, now that you are interested, now that you're excited, I should say, let's talk a little bit about what it takes to get there. Our trip, again, departs June 9th to June 20th, 12 days, 9 nights, features 20 meals. Land only based on double occupancy is $4,999. There's $999 single supplement if you're planning on traveling as a single. If you're looking to book your airfare, we can book airfare from any major gateway in the US. So regardless
Mhm.
of where you're joining us from, it could be New York, it could be LA. You can work with Nicola and her team to kind of find the right flights for you so that way you can join us where our journey will start and begin in Johannesburg. If you are interested in joining us, the deposit is only $500 per person. That holds your spot. We do encourage travel insurance at the time of deposit as well. And that $500 is fully refundable up until January 10th, minus a $95 service fee. So most of that money is returnable. And with a group of only 20 people, our seats do tend to sell out. And the worst thing that we hate to do is put someone on a wait list there at Nanda Journey. So if you're interested in signing up, we encourage you to put your deposits down sooner as opposed to later, so that way you can ensure you have your spot and you have your seat to join us on this amazing South Africa journey next year. Also, like I said, the space is limited to 24 passengers. With that said, we have been answering questions as we've been along, but if you do have questions, please throw them in the chat there on the right-hand side of the screen. In the meantime, while we wait I have one question of my own. I know, Pat, you were there in 2010. What are you most excited about going back to South Africa?
Well, actually, going back, I'm going to be going to some new places. Some of the places you all mentioned I've been to, but some of the places I have not. I mean, we were in Cape Town and so forth and so on. But I'm just interested. Is this the Laura Kennedy who went to Michigan State, who teaches at Northern Michigan with Kristen White? Put it in there, because there's a Laura Kennedy. I know there's more than one Laura Kennedy in the whole country, but that name just popped out at me, Laura Kennedy. Mm-hmm.
While we wait for Laura,
yes it is. She finished our program. Absolutely fantastic person. She's lived abroad. She lived in Korea, and very smart, very, very smart. And so she and Kristen White are doing great things up at Northern Michigan and Marquette, Michigan.
That's awesome. Well, Laura, we're happy to chat with you about extending your time. And I wanted to thank Lindsay and Ezekiel and Laura for the questions, and Darla as well. We think it'll be an amazing opportunity too, for sure. So we appreciate your engagement and your questions. There's so much more to say. So reach out and be in touch. I think that's the next step for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you have any other questions, obviously it's when everything shuts down that the questions finally come. So we're sure you'll be wanting to reach out to us. You can see our website there. You can give us a phone call at 888-747-7501, or reach out to Nicola and our team at info@nandajourneys.com. Any last words or any final thoughts you want to leave us with? We'll start with you, Nicola. Any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
Well, South Africa is special, and if it isn't obvious already, Pat's going to be an absolute delight to travel with. She not only is kind of so fantastic in her work life, she has an amazing approach to work-life balance and having fun. So I'm super jealous I'm not coming with you on this amazing journey. But no, thanks everybody for being here. We really appreciate you taking time, and yeah, come join us in South Africa.
And come join us and bring your friends along. You know what? One of the things that I like to do is treat myself to something, because I've seen people, you want to work, but you want to also have time to enjoy yourself. And I kind of jokingly say to people, you know, I ask people, what have you done lately? And so when they tell me they've only done work, I said, you need to have a time to enjoy yourself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just to relax and go places and learn. I mean, when I was the president of the International Reading Association, I got a chance to go to 49 states and 54 countries. So when I would go, I would just go in a particular area. Let's say I went to the Philippines. Well, I would go to Hong Kong, and then because those places are very close together once you're in the area. Taiwan, you know, Singapore, Korea. And so I enjoyed just meeting people and learning about them, and it broadens you out. And really, Laura, being a graduate of Michigan State, she knows that one of the things we talk about global literacy, that we're a global land grant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's been, I was just going to say, there's never been a time where if I thought I could afford something, but I was hesitant, that I've ever, and especially in travel, when I thought I could, I hesitate to afford, that I've actually gone. I've never regretted that. So like, absolutely, you get one shot at this life, make it the best you can. So thank you so much, Pat, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in South Africa. Thank you, Nicola, for joining us as well. And mostly, thank you all in our audience for joining us. We wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for our audience. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Michael. I'm with Nanda Journeys. We look forward to seeing you on the next Nanda Journeys webinar. But most importantly, we look forward to seeing you in South Africa next year. Thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening or the rest of your day.
It's awesome. Okay. Thanks, Carla. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hope to see you.